So in all of your questions, all of your discovery, which is what connection's all about, is discovering your partner, staying flexible enough and interested enough and focused on them enough to learn what their position is, why that position makes sense to them, and what they need to shift into a different space, right? So after you have prepared, after you have connected with your partner and they're vibing with you and they're interested in hearing what you have to say, that is when you have earned the opportunity to inform them.
Your organization has achieved a significant dent in vaccine mandates.
We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the post-safety. But one thing we know it's rare.
This is the invitation received today as well as Monday. And if you scroll down and put this in chat, you'll see the context for today, which is just because we got RFK in the government doesn't mean we've solved the vaccine issue. In fact, I think it was pretty Orwellian when we saw the degree to which RFK had to bend the knee to that rhino from Louisiana promising support for the current vaccine edifice. In a way, we know he had to have some tongue in his cheek, because there's no way RFK believed what he was saying. And then we look at Massachusetts. Despite the COVID tyranny and nonsense and corruption, there remain states that still are attacking our religious exemptions from vaccines, and even kidnapping kids when the parents don't participate in this public health charade. However, if we do want to make progress on informed consent and honest science, we can't do it without Democrats or rhinos and others who aren't with us. And unfortunately, polls show that the public isn't really with us totally on the vaccine issue. They're still pretty well easily cowed by TV programming and fear porn. And Ms. Bigford, whom I met at our National Health Federation conference in Dallas, impressed me at her booth on her emphasis on teaching advocates how to communicate properly. And I think this is information all of us can use or be reminded of, because, at least when I left lobbying a bit to go become a teacher and got my master's, we did have to learn psychology and how to speak to your audience. And I think all of us struggle how to communicate difficult topics with friends, family, or adversaries. So most of us just avoid those conversations, especially now that we're so divided in this country between those who think and those. Anyways, so Carrie has come up with a pretty strong course with details to pass bills in Texas, stop bad bills, train advocates, organize events. And without further ado, Carrie, tell us why communicating is so important if we ever want to hope to have health freedom. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, communication is important because anything you want to accomplish in the world, you accomplish with humans. We're a social species. We don't live in a vacuum. And difficult topics are a part of life, an inescapable part of life. And conflict is inevitable, just like death and taxes. I cannot live in my own personal internal space without the occasional internal conflict. And that frames for me how futile it is to assume that I will never experience external conflict. And so rather than being concerned about the fear, right, because fear is one of the biggest barriers to outreach, you can gain a deeper understanding of how the human brain works, how connection and communication between humans work. And you can use that information to better manage your partner's downstairs brain, which we'll get into later, and help them be more receptive to what you have to say. So I am the outreach director of Texans for Vaccine Choice. I have been a part of this organization for staff since 2023 when I implemented my program. But I am not new to medical liberty. I started in California in the year 2000 just as a volunteer. And then I also volunteered in Colorado doing most of the legislative advocacy and community-based outreach. Texans for Vaccine Choice itself has been around for 10 years. We have killed every bad bill that's ever been introduced since our inception. In the past 2 legislative sessions, since the implementation of our outreach program, we have passed 11 protective pieces of legislation and kept our 0% kill bill rate. And we've also trained 75 advocates in our approach. Okay. There's a few basic things to understand about humans. I don't know if anyone here on this call has had this experience of you having a well-intended and well-meaning conversation that your partner misconstrues and behaves in a way that doesn't make rational sense, right? I'm sure everyone here has experienced that humans just do not always behave in ways that make rational sense. And there's an actual biological reason for this. We have what I learned in school. I have a master's degree in counseling, and before I joined TFVC, was a mental health professional in private practice for over a decade. And so there's a 2-story brain situation happening with people. We have our upstairs brain, which is slow, deliberative, logical, excellent outreach partner for us type brain, right? Our executive functioning brain, our prefrontal cortex brain. But then underneath, we have the downstairs brain, which is fast, instinctive, and always a little bit running amok based on your feelings, okay? And the fun thing about humans is there's no external staircase. The only way that you can access someone's logical, slow, deliberative, excellent outreach partner upstairs brain is through the staircase downstairs. And when you appreciate that the main driver of humans' choices and behaviors is this emotionally based downstairs brain, that awareness alone kind of shifts the approach that you take when you're dealing with people in an outreach scenario, right? So the first thing you have to do is prepare yourself to do the work, okay? And preparing yourself to do the work is part of that awareness of that upstairs, downstairs brain. It's also preparing a specific, not nuanced, objective reality, fact of focus that you will inform when you get to that place in the conversation, right? So to be aware. So for medical liberty, we have 5 facts of focus that are not nuanced and objective reality, even with the censorship of the day, that are lack of liability, lack of informed consent, different classification and safety standards, the vaccine schedule itself, and your legal exemption rights, okay? So that's part of prepare. The other part of prepare is to get yourself emotionally regulated and grounded enough to where you won't be victim to the winds of your partner's emotional Sahara Desert windstorm coming at you. You want to get to some place where you can be centered enough to stay in your upstairs brain and not be tempted to go downstairs and have a confrontation, okay? So one of the other things that we do after we've prepared, so we're ready, we're in the headspace and the heart space to go and attempt to reach out to someone else about a potentially polarized topic. Fabulous. The next thing you have to do in outreach is connect, okay? Connect always precedes inform. We never attempt to inform before we've connected because connection is what manages your partner's downstairs brain and establishes enough trust and safety to grant you access upstairs. If you try and inform too soon, you will have a confrontation and face intense resistance, okay? So to help our advocates with the connection piece, we have a lot of tools and strategies. We have what I've coined the practical empathy toolkit to help you connect in short, easy tools that are extensions of normal human behavior that I do not have time to go into today. I'm so sorry. But we have lots of tools to help you connect because you prepare yourself, you connect with your partner, which is you gaining their willingness to hear it from you, right? And so you can do that through a lot of different ways. You want to get to know your partner through asking open-ended questions, through mirroring their behavior. There's a lens that we use to guide all of our outreach work. That was not my idea. I wish that it was, but it predates my lifetime. There was a UCLA psychology professor named Albert Mehabrian who coined the realization of human interactions that was the 7-38-55% rule. And we use that as a lens in all of our interactions, okay? So that states, according to Albert Mahabrian, that only 7% of the meaning perceived by your partner from you comes from the actual words spoken. Only 7%. Like, I spent literal sad years trying to find perfect words, magical words that would bring the people to the light. And when I accepted through painful trial and error experiences that the best words only got me 7% of the communication puzzle, it really forced me to rework it. The next thing the 738-55% rule state is that 38%, way more than 7, of your partner's perceived meaning of you comes from your tone of voice alone, okay? And that 55% of your partner's perceived meaning of you comes from your facial expressions and body language. The 738-55% rule is a communications truth that I have tested thousands and thousands of times in real world scenarios with complete strangers, and it holds. It's not what you say, it's how you say it that carries the most weight in any human interaction, okay? And it works the other way too, right? Because as you're talking to your partner and you notice discrepancy between the words that they say and their nonverbal cues, like their tone of voice, their body language, and facial expressions, you can begin to discern in the moment where your partner feels uncomfortable. And you can shift in the moment towards helping your partner continue to be receptive to you, right? Connecting is all about enhancing and creating receptivity, right? No one is going to listen to you. It doesn't matter how great your informed piece is if they don't feel connected to you and safe enough to connect first. You must navigate that downstairs brain, calm it down in order to ascend upstairs where you can have a real detailed conversation about a difficult topic like medical liberty, okay? So knowing that you have that lens, knowing that you're connecting, that is the next piece. And we really spend a lot of time focusing on connection. We have actual role playing of different tones of voices in our program. We have tons and tons of actual strategies with step-by-step instructions, for when things go sideways, when you've had a blow up in the past, how do you get back to that, right? How do you rebuild those connections? Because when you look at it as prepare and then connect, and then inform, it's so much easier when you accept and understand how humans interact together and connect and begin to talk and think as a unit, which is what outreach is all about. Outreach is all about finding ways to quickly cooperate and think and talk together and move together. And during your connection step, when you are getting to know your partner, when you're gaining the influence to inform them later, you're looking for 3 main things: what their position is, why that position makes sense to them, because I guarantee you it makes sense to them. And 3, what they need to shift into a different space, right? So in all of your questions, all of your discovery, which is what connection's all about, is discovering your partner, staying flexible enough and interested enough and focused on them enough to learn what their position is, why that position makes sense to them, and what they need to shift into a different space, right? So after you have prepared, after you have connected with your partner and they're vibing with you and they're interested in hearing what you have to say, that is when you have earned the opportunity to inform them, okay? And when you inform someone, it's very important to pick something that is specific, that is easily verifiable. I mean, even Google, Grok, even with the censorship of the day, easily verifiable and not nuanced. It is so important, especially with medical liberty, that when you choose to inform, that you choose to inform specifically about something that is objective reality and not nuanced. Because medical liberty is a unique movement in the sense that most people who are advocates for it came here through some kind of trauma. Okay. We came here through primary, secondary, or tertiary trauma. Somebody somewhere that we knew was affected by vaccine injury, and that injury changed us. That certainly was my story. I came to the movement through trauma also more than 25 years ago. But if you didn't come here through trauma, you're asking your partner to shift their worldview. Okay? The worldview, the predominant pushed worldview, is that vaccines are safe and effective at any time, in any amount, for any reason. That's the worldview. I have read actual state exemption forms whose first line is vaccines are the greatest medical invention in the last 100 years and saved billions of lives. Like, that is an exemption form, right? The narrative is strong. And so it's so important to not just be surprised by pushback, but to expect it, which is why when you're attempting to shift someone's worldview, which is what you're doing in the absence of trauma, that you want to be specific about something that they can easily fact check on their phone in front of you, as I've had people do many, many times, that they can't debate on, right? There's no debating the reality. The vaccine recipient themselves is the sole guarantor of all legal, financial, and physical risk. There's nothing debatable about the fact that actual federal laws have been passed to restrict your ability to be made aware of the risks inherent in the vaccination process. There's nothing debatable about the fact that they are classified and regulated differently than pharmaceutical drugs because they're biologics. There's nothing debatable about what the vaccine schedule is. There's nothing debatable about what your state level exemption rights are, okay? So I see a lot of advocates start in the weeds, right? They will start in the weeds and they will wonder why it breaks down. And it's because when you're asking someone to shift a worldview, humans in general don't like to do that. It creates a lot of extra work for someone to have to shift their worldview, and it creates a lot of extra drama that they just don't usually want to handle. And so it's important to do not nuanced, and it's also important to avoid what I call seed bombing, which is doing more than one fact of focus per encounter, right? Each of these not nuanced objective reality facts are powerful. And I want my partner to marinate in the reality of that. I want them to be thinking about their conversation with me for days. I want them to be sitting with the reality that I have just dropped into their lap that they cannot disprove despite their best efforts, right? I want them to sit with that. So it's important not to blow your partner out of the water by doing all the facts all at once. I'll be really honest, I struggled with seed bombing for an embarrassingly long amount of time. I would get excited, I would connect really well with my partner, and then I would blow them out of the water by giving them every fact of focus in the known universe. I would overwhelm them. It would shut down the connection. It would make them feel unsafe. And then I would be a weirdo, not in a good way, right? So it's really important to, again, maintain your own self-discipline, which is part of prepare, right? In our program, we actually suggest 4 self-led evidence-based coping skills to help you as an individual with the process of emotional regulation, if that's something that you've struggled with or something that is new to you. But I am thoroughly unattached to whatever pathway you take to get to Regulation City. I just know that the best outreach in the world comes from when you can visit Regulation City and stay there during the encounter. When you can not be swayed by the whims of your partner, and you can stay resolute and on topic and able to manage their downstairs brain and get things back on track through your connection skills, that is when you become fearless as an advocate, okay? So we have prepared ourselves. We have connected with our partner, and we have earned the prize of their willingness to hear it from us, right? We've gained the influence to inform them. We have informed them specifically about something that is not nuanced, that is objective reality, and that, affects them regardless of their choices. 4 of our 5 facts of focus affect you more heavily when you choose to vaccinate versus when you choose to decline. So it really isn't a pro and anti conversation at all. And after you have informed your partner, the next step is very crucial also. You allow. Okay? The other place where I see advocates really struggle is with allowing. We do not get to control the choices that our partner makes. That is not for us to decide. I literally work for Texans for Vaccine Choice. And part of that is accepting that autonomy means autonomy. And it can be emotionally angsty as an advocate when you get too attached to your partner's outcome, to the choice that they make, and you don't allow them to marinate in whatever situation and progression on reality they are towards a realization that medical liberty is for all the humans, regardless of their choices. Allowing seems passive, but it's actually harder than it sounds. Most advocates are struggling with the allow step. When I see them in the wild, they get too attached. And people can feel that instinctively because, again, we're wired to connect. We are hardwired to detect our partner's emotional states. We are hardwired, even though we're disconnected on screens all the time. We're still humans and we're still hardwired to look for those cues. And the paradox of outreach is when you, as the advocate, can let go of your need to control their choice, which is what you're doing when you're too attached to their choice, right? When their choice is no longer acceptable to you, right? That's your work to process. When you can let go of your need to control their choice, that is the moment when you gain the type of influence that can really help them shift their choice. I have lost count of how many powerful encounters I have been a part of where they try and bait me by telling me that they love their vaccines. They want to get all of them. And I don't care. And I don't touch it. And I say, oh, well, it seems like you've misunderstood the name of our organization. We're Texans for Vaccine Choice. I'm not interested in your choice. That is when they get curious about what I actually have to say. The predominant social belief is that people like me or advocates like you are here to control them, are here to shame, blame, and judge them for their choices. And when you treat that like a third rail, and when you allow them, truly allow them to have their autonomy, that is when they get super curious about what you actually have to share. I am the outreach director. I speak all over the state with small groups, big groups, friendly groups, very unfriendly groups. It doesn't matter. We have tools and strategies to help you reach out to anyone. And even though people are often skeptical when I begin, they are not skeptical when I am done. Even if they decide that they still want to get some vaccines, which again, I don't even ask their vaccine status because it's not my business to know, right? And the more I respect their privacy, the safer they feel, which gives me more upstairs brain access. And it truly is irrelevant because the information will shift their choices on its own. Because when you dive in to the depths of the actual safety approval process, of the actual product efficacy rates, those begin to shift you on their own. The challenge is breaking through that cultural construct of conditioning and helping them to be receptive to what's actually right in front of them. That's the real challenge in outreach. It's not the actual information itself. The information itself is fairly impeccable, but it's getting them to be willing to examine the information because it feels so threatening to their worldview, right? Humans really don't like to do that. And they will often have a big downstairs brain reaction about it, which you can evidence on any social media platform ever. You can see numerous accounts of downstairs brain tantrums happening all over the place, people not being able to connect, not being able to get there together. And that is a big part of that. So again, outreach, 4 main steps. Prepare yourself. Get yourself in the headspace, in the heart space, to allow that person to be the sole focus for you and to leave your biases, judgments, and choices at the door as you become curious about your partner and discovering through connection, step 2, what their position is, why that position makes sense to them, because it does, and what they need to shift into a different space. After you've connected and gained their interest, their willingness to hear it from you, you inform them specifically about something that is not nuanced, that is objective reality, that can be pushed back on just fine. And you want to do it in an outreach bridge that's like 45 seconds or less. If you cannot tell me the gist of what your focus is, your fact of focus in 45 seconds, it's too nuanced. I am very strict about this in my training program. We train on this a lot. People want to go into the weeds and they want to build a bridge to build a bridge to build the bridge. Nope. Use your discipline. Use your prepare step and come up with bridges that are short and succinct and not nuanced. Okay? And then after you've informed them, you allow. You take deep breaths. You keep your nervous system calm because that keeps your partner's nervous system calm also. And you allow that paradigm shifting information to work on them. And you'll see it in their faces. I see it all the time. The light bulb goes on. And they think about me. Many of them, because I do outreach everywhere I go, so I see the same people at the same stores and the same things, and they remember me. I inform them again next time. People ask for my number. They ask for verification. They ask to go get coffee because they left that encounter feeling as though they were treated well, because that's a very important part of outreach, treating them well. And that I left them with something that brought them closer to my perspective and left them curious about what else I have to say. So that's a very high level overview of outreach, right? You want to be mindful of the 738-55% rule because it's true. I have tested it with thousands and thousands and thousands of interactions. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. You can use very direct and firm language, as I do quite often, in a relaxed, approachable voice tone and a relaxed, approachable body language. And that will get you so much farther than flowery, perfect words with an aggressive voice tone or an aggressive body language. Those things, I could see it right there in all of your faces. Even with that, with me changing my voice tone, I can use the same words and the same words I've been saying. You need to prepare, you need to connect, inform, and allow. And just the voice tone change and the body language change completely altered your perception of me and what I had to bring to the table. And one of the biggest things to develop as an advocate is your own discipline, your own awareness of how you're presenting to others. We have lots of fun games as a team where we joke about and laugh about our own shortcomings. I love to go first because there are so many of them. And I have a great time laughing about how I'm so tempted to talk so quickly, and I'm so tempted to seed bomb every fact of focus in the known universe, like an aerial assault. And we love to joke about those things that we know that we do, that we're working on. And then we develop strategies to help us stay present in the moment. But it's all starts with you. You, the advocate, are all you will ever need to shift anyone. Bring some awareness about your tone of voice, about your body language, about the specificity of the information that you share, and be aware that humans do not always behave in ways that make rational sense. And once you accept that, you can develop tools to help your partner get back on track with you, to restart that connection again. Because it will happen. You will also occasionally be tempted to go downstairs too. And we help you develop skills to avoid that temptation and stay upstairs in the land of wonderful, productive outreach. Humans are not scripts. There are no magical words, but you are very magical. And your presence and your ability to leverage the innate power of human connection will get you so much farther than any script ever would. So that's the big nutshell with outreach. I mean, we have a phenomenal program. If you live in Texas, it's all free. You can volunteer 3 to 6 hours a month. We have a whole workbook that goes along with our communications class. We have real support and training for you. If you are outside of Texas, I've decided that these communication skills are so important that I've opened up the class to people outside of Texas. So if you're outside of Texas or you're in Texas, but you don't want to volunteer 3 to 6 hours a month and you want to buy a ticket, you can buy a ticket to the class and that gets you a workbook and an admission seat into our class. I teach the class live every 3 months, our communications class. The next opportunity to train with me is on July 24th of 2025. After that, it will be October 30th of 2025, and then we'll restart again in January. I do cap the classes, so if you're interested in joining, definitely email me at Carrie, Carrie, at texans4vaccinechoice.com. I'm going to share my screen just for a minute to show you our website. Let's see, share. And if you are in Texas, you can go here to our website and you can click Get Involved right here. And you can click volunteer and you can become a voice for vaccine choice. Click this red button and an application comes up, an application that goes directly to me. And then we discuss whether you're a good fit for our program. And if you are, we enroll you and we begin to change the world together. So that's our website. Lots and lots of useful information on here. Tons and tons of stuff. Not all Texas specific, but certainly lots of Texas-specific information. But outreach it's a skill that you can learn regardless of where you began. And once you begin to understand how human brain interactions work, how human connection works, and the power that exists in that connection, that is when you become fearless. I've been fearless for years now. There is literally no one that I won't talk to. And my team loves to watch it, and I love to do it. So, yeah. I know that was a lot of information. I hope it was a very high level. The class is extremely detailed. No one has ever left my class without several useful things that they could immediately employ to enhance their outreach work. I see hands.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie.
Is that okay on time?
Yeah, perfect. And very informative. Good work.
Thank you.
It reminds me, I met a couple of, I took an acting class years ago, and there were a number of lawyers in it. So to be able to present themselves properly to judge and jury and whatever.
Yeah, human connection is very powerful. There's nothing stronger than the energy of human connection.
And then I do have a quick question. Sure. Seed bomb, what's that mean in Texas? Is that
seed bomb? So seed bomb is my silly phrase for when you do more than one fact of focus at a time. So you want to, because you're having your partner do a worldview shift, and because humans naturally resist a shift in their worldview because it creates a lot of extra work for them to reconcile everything else through that new lens, because a worldview is a lens that you see the world through. And so seed bombing is, let's say, instead of using discipline and informing your partner about the lack of liability, you were to say, you as a vaccine recipient are the sole guarantor of all legal, physical, and financial risk, and they're not classified as pharmaceutical drugs, they're classified as biologics, so you're kind of screwed there too. And they have actual federal laws that have been passed to restrict your ability to be made aware of the risk involved as a vaccine recipient, and they've totally added like dozens and dozens of extra vaccines to the vaccine schedule. See how overwhelming this feels?
Okay, so I was just trying to, it's not like F-bomb, it's just...
No, seed bombing, it's seed, like a seed plant, like a plant seed.
Oh, okay.
Seed, like SEED.
Got it.
Yeah, like, because each of these facts of focus is a seed of truth. You don't want to throw all of them on the ground at once, because just like with you, it feels overwhelming to your partner.
Sure.
And even if they're connected to you, that will push them away.
Now, and also, since growing up, I'm a guy, I've always heard, it's your downstairs brain, Jim.
Yeah.
I kind of think you're referring to something else. I guess women have a downstairs brain also, right? But
all humans have a downstairs brain. Maybe men have 3, right?
About 3.
But all humans have at least one downstairs brain. Maybe men have an additional sub-basement brain, right? could be a sub-basement brain. But all humans have a two-story brain. It's divided between the animal mind, the downstairs fast, instinctive, emotionally based, and the upstairs rational, slow, deliberative, and logical.
Yeah. Real quick. I was actually looking for a conference space this afternoon with a colleague, and we went to one. I mean, like two venues, and the first one, he did not like the people. I liked the venue. I said, okay, I got it with the pricing or something, and then we went to the second. He loved the people. And then we're sitting there and he's like cursing about the first group. I'm saying, wait a minute, let's go back there. But I just want you to like put the emotions aside and tell me if I think this space is better for us. And he goes back and he said, yeah, you're right. It is better.
But that's the power of connection and the downstairs brain. It's not what you say that people remember. It's how you made them feel that they remember. Yeah. And so once you begin to manage someone's downstairs brain and help them establish enough trust and safety to allow you upstairs where all the magic happens, that's when it becomes magical.
Got it. Charlie. Yes. Thanks.
Actually, I was second after Mark.
I didn't need Mark's hand. Oh, kind of hidden there. Okay, Mark, you're up.
Thank you. I'm sorry I came late, but I had another meeting scheduled simultaneously, so I had to actually leave that one early because I didn't want to miss this. I wanted to...
I hope it was worth your while.
It was a required meeting, so...
Yay. Okay.
I'm with a group that's trying to set standards for homeopathy and the Institute of Homeopathy, and it's a project that's very worthwhile. But anyway, I wanted to tell you a little story, something that happened to me, and ask you if you encounter such things often and how you handle the inevitable negative reaction that, in spite of your best efforts, you must come upon from time to time.
So humans don't always behave in ways that make rational sense.
So about 6 years ago, I met with my local representative. I was trying to start a committee for environmental safety here in Rhode Island, where I live. And I said, I really could use your support in creating this committee, and we're trying to clean up the air and the water and the food and this and that, and also alert people to the dangers of unsafe medications, the side effects, and also vaccination. Now, once I said the word vaccination, she got, very like, well, don't talk to me about vaccination.
I've seen it.
I know those are safe and effective. And I said, well, I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm just saying that, every drug has some side of it. I was being like very low key about it. And she got so upset. She got up and left. She had to end the meeting. And I said, well, how do you know that they're safe and effective? He said, well, I have friends in Washington. Who, okay. Whatever. I didn't try to press her on it, but she was really becoming quite irrational. I felt like there's nothing I could say. And she got up and left. That was the end of the meeting. And I hadn't even really, I felt I felt like we were kind of on the same boat with trying to clean up the environment. And yet as soon as I mentioned vaccines, she kind of hit the roof and she couldn't even have a conversation about it. So I'm wondering, there are situations which you consider to be just impossible where the person is just so, cloistered in their own world that you just can't access them? Or are there generally ways to handle even the most difficult kinds of situations? So maybe you can riff on that a little, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I would say both are true. Part of allowing, right? Our 4-step in outreach is always allow. Part of allowing can be allowing that they're not willing, right? I am very good at what I do. I am very skilled at enhancing your willingness to hear it from me, but not everyone in the world is going to be willing. And part of your discernment and your advocate journey as you develop your skills is learning to recognize when they are just not willing at all. So that's one way. But in your case, there's 2 different tools that I would consider employing to do 2 different tracks. You can use what I call an obstacle audit. which is a great tool to use with someone that you know or suspect is divergent in their views. And it's basically a list of obstacles. So if you wanted to continue to go down the vaccine path and you recognize their reaction, you can go, oh, I am so sorry. I know that you hear the word vaccine, you immediately think tinfoil hat wearing anti-science nut job who thinks that I'm here to kill the world and bring measles back for all of us to die a horrible death in camps. But really, there's some serious safety issues that when you're ready, I'd love to discuss with you, right? So that's an obstacle audit, which an obstacle audit works in the brain because the hyperbole sounds ridiculous, because it is. And it calms your partner down, and it usually elicits an automatic response of minimizing or mitigating the risks, right? Whatever obstacles you've named. That was just an off the top of my head. You can make one much more specific. And the other thing that I would do would be to use a label. So a label just identifies what that person's emotion is without attaching you or them to it. It's a great way to acknowledge the negative behavior and allow that person to change the behavior without anyone being called responsible for the behavior. So in a label, you'd say, oh, it sounds like there's a lot more growth for us to do with the vaccine topic. Let's leave that to the side for now, and we'll revisit it later, right? And again, calm, cool, collected voice, calm it down. But a label will automatically either get them to say, yes, you're right. I am not yet ready to discuss vaccines. We'll circle back to it later. And you can work on connect, right? You can work on developing that relationship through safer pathways and then revisit that pathway later because that connection is still open. Or they'll deny the label and they'll say, oh, no. I am here, balls to the wall to talk about vaccines with you, buddy. Let's go, right? But either way, you'll get a behavioral shift, right? So I would use one of those tools. I mean, you could also use like an open-ended question to discover more about the resistance, or you could mirror. I mean, there's lots of different things. And I would use those skills as a litmus test to determine if they're really not willing or if they're just stuck in their own narrative, right? Because there are definitely people who are just not willing. I have met them. I have interacted with them. The best gift I give myself is becoming more discerning and recognizing them and not wasting my time on them, because there's billions of people in the world. There's always somebody else I can reach out to who is willing to reach out to me, right? But I love to use those skills, right? Our practical empathy toolkit. There's several tools in there that you can employ to discern whether that person really is willing or whether you've just hit the worldview shifting button and they're freaking out, because that's what people do when they get the vibe that you're asking them to think, be, or do different. Humans don't like to think, be, or do different. You have to make it possible to enhance their willingness to do that work. Does that answer your question?
That was great. Yeah. One thing before I
Can I jump in a second, Mark? Because you said you were a little late coming in. And earlier on, if you missed this, Carrie was talking about don't be nuanced with a lot of things like environment plus vaccine. So maybe just if you had one issue that she had to go with that was in her bailiwick, the environment or something, without adding other things on top of it. I don't know if you heard that, right? I mean, something like that, Carrie?
Humans are easily overwhelmed. Like the psychological research of my former life dictates that humans can only hold about 7 pieces of information at a time. Not new information, total. So we're easily overwhelmed. And part of dealing with humans and calming that chaos and being aware of that is not seed bombing and paying attention to your partner's nonverbal cues about when they're beginning to get overwhelmed and listening to them and backing off, right? Because when you stay and respect the connection with your partner, when that becomes a priority, when you're listening to them and you're connected with them and you're following their cues and you're allowing them to be as they are, you can modify and make changes in the moment to keep that connection alive. Maybe you won't in a single conversation get to talk about 15 topics, but you will maintain that connection with that person so that you will have future opportunities to continue to build relationship with them. Does that make sense?
Yes, I hear the primacy of the connection. I just wanted
Yeah.
to pick your brain before I shut up. One more
By all
comment.
means, pick it away.
Sometimes when I've talked about the vaccine issue, particularly like the COVID vaccine issue with people who are still believing in the safe and effective narrative,
Yeah.
I will preface my remarks by saying, don't believe anything I tell you. I want you most of all to just think about it and do your own research. But from what I've read, and then I'll just say, my position. So I basically say, don't believe me. I just want you to investigate yourself, do your own thinking about it. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. But I'm just going to share with you what I've learned. Is that discounting myself too much, or is that not a good strategy?
I would have suggestions if you're willing to hear them. The first is you don't want to use I too much because that tells your partner you're more interested in you than you are in them. And when you use I the way you used it with the label as you did, it makes you take personal responsibility for any emotional fallout from the label. So don't want to do that. Instead, I would ask open-ended questions. I would be like, what can you tell me about the safety and efficacy of the COVID vaccine? What can you tell me about how the trials were designed? What can you tell me, or what do you think about the stories of injury reports? How do you think we can move forward as a society and honor informed consent while this is happening? What would you have done differently during the pandemic? What are your thoughts about XYZ, right? I would use an open-ended question and not ascribe myself and maintain neutrality, because again, that gives their downstairs brain and your downstairs brain an off ramp, right? It gives somewhere for that energy to go where it's not at you, which is great. And you also get to learn more about them. One of my favorite open-ended openers is, how familiar are you with this subject matter? What interests you most about this topic, right? Those are some of my two favorites. And how much time do you have? I love that one too, right? Because all of those things give me immediate information that I can use to tailor my approach to them. Like, we don't teach you scripts at TFVC. We teach you how to become a better communicator. And you can use those skills everywhere. My advocates come to learn how to talk about medical liberty. And the reports that I get is once they begin to play with the toys, they use them in all of their interactions to great success. Because everywhere you go, there you find humans. And negotiation and communication are a part of life that is inescapable. So that's a fun side effect. But I would definitely, that approach to me seems like it would bring up defensiveness, where I would have to defend my position, and it wouldn't make me feel open and approachable to you. It would make me feel like, dude, what are you talking about? Telling me that I don't know what to do? Your research so fancy. Like, humans' downstairs brains are very primal. And that triggers defensiveness, which we, of course, as advocates, want to mitigate as much as possible, the defensiveness, to have that open conversation going.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Tim. And if I can share my screen real quick. So Carrie, when we met at the Dallas conference of National Health Federation,
yes,
we do have a bill in Congress to establish a federal right to decline vaccines that are connected federally, whether via funding, licensing, or mandating. It's right in this sentence right here, what it does. It also requires Surgeon General reporting of the disease outcome comparisons between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated to help with informed consent, to help with choice, that kind of thing. So comment on that if you want, but it might be new to you, so no need to comment.
I haven't seen this before. This is great.
Yeah, and thank you. And we have a generic bill for any state. Basically, it's my rewriting of NVIC's recommendations on what you can push in your state. So different codes, get more choice, etc. More firepower.
I'm well acquainted with state level advocacy.
Exactly. So my question is RFK, and I'll put also in our chat the sign up for our monthly Zoom this next week, next Friday. I have Congressman Chip Roy from your state, as
Oh,
well as
yay. We've had Chip on our podcast numerous times. He's a great fan of us.
good. And so Congressman Roy, and then the State Freedom Caucus, which is an outgrowth of the House Freedom Caucus.
Yep.
Let's see here. What about RFK? Is he communicating with the lower downstairs brain before he goes into the seed bombing? How do you rate his way of finding out what his opponents think and why and what they need to do to shift?
I mean, first of all, I am not in RFK's mind, so I can't really speak quite strongly on his mental landscape, right? Or his emotional landscape, certainly. But I have observed that he's deeply entrenched and having a very challenging time maintaining functional control over these health agencies that have really been quite rogue, that are not for true public health. I don't know how else to say it, but they've lost the plot years ago. And so he's trying to come in internally and shift. I think probably behind the scenes, he's very much working on the connect piece and getting their downstairs brain to calm down. They're definitely reacting in this fear place that people get to when they feel like they're losing control. You can see that in all of the agencies' heads with their abject defiance of common sense science, and the absolute freak out to his, rolling out that new vaccines would have to have an inert placebo. They're acting like everyone's going to die because of it. His desire to replace ASIP with people who do not have, financial conflicts of interest with industry, which again, you would never even see that in another industry. You would never see the NHTSA, the National Highway, Transportation Safety Administration, with, industry insiders. You would never see that in other industries for watchdog groups. And yet that's what we have here. RFK has been extremely effective in his advocacy work over the past 10 years or so, since he started CHD and got really involved. I've met him several times in person and found him to be genuine. He's not moving as fast as I would personally like, but I also don't understand the depth and the breadth of the resistance that he's facing within those agencies. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I can't speak to his mental emotional state. I know that he definitely is a heavily evidence-based man, and he adopts my same train of not trying to shift people with nuanced activities. You want it to be not nuanced. He never says anything he can't back up with hard evidence. He's very cautious of that, as am I. And so I think that works in his benefit. And I think he's done a great job of presenting his material and allowing people to sit with it, right? You don't have to like this reality that no vaccine has been tested with an inert placebo and everything that means, but it is the reality, right? I don't know if that answers or not, but.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other?
Okay. Yeah, we have, looks like the last question, Charles Ford.
Yes. As far as
Hi.
Kennedy goes, if he really wants to start getting some things done and not end up like a first-term Trump, he needs to outlaw fructose in all food supplies immediately. That would be a good beginning point. I see reports, bureaucracy. I don't see action. I'm not very impressed. But that's not the reason I'm on here. Going back to the conversation we're having with the good doctor, one of the things that I have employed over the years, having been a long-term graduate of Dale Carnegie back in the day, is that, and then also Stephen Covey. One of the things that if you can control your emotions and your ego in the conversation, and that's where half the battle, more than half the battle is.
Yeah.
When a person says that, and you've come to that train wreck moment that, you've used the V word and they have responded hostilely. The mechanism that I often employ in response is to seek first to understand. And that is to go back to that person and say, well, help me to understand. What is your view on vaccines? Can you help me to understand that? Coming back with that lets that person know you heard what they said, and now you're curious and you want to hear more. So I just thought I'd throw that out there just for the benefit of the group today. And thank you. This has been very enlightening, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Seeking to understand is a crucial component of outreach, and part of the prepare step, right? Is you put your judgments, your biases, your choices off to the side, and you allow yourself to become curious about what your partner's position is, why it makes sense to them, and what they need, right? And your emotional regulation is key, which is why in our program, we actually have a whole coping skills corner, part of our program, that has optional self-led coping skills that can help you with the process of emotional regulation. They can all be done in public on the fly with nobody noticing. They can be done privately to work on bigger things if you choose to. But again, I am not attached to whatever skills you take to get to Regulation City. I am only attached to your ability to arrive at Regulation City and stay there as much as possible during the encounter, because you have a downstairs brain too, and you need to employ discipline, not to have a downstairs brain tantrum when you're invited.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Nate, you're up. And
hi, thanks, Jim.
Hi, Nate.
And hi, Carrie. And before I go to my question, I had put something in the chat. I wasn't sure if you were ever you're familiar.
I haven't been able to look at the chat.
Yeah, so David Sharalimbo, reachingpeople.net. Are you familiar with that resource out there out of the UK?
I am not.
Does a whole lot of what you're talking about. I tuned into him in 2020, 2021 when I realized we were into behavioral science, NPI. And so that was going on. When you're speaking about effectiveness and communicating with people and picking up on vocal, your tone and expressions and all that kind of stuff. I lobbied in Colorado for nearly 20 years. And so I was there lobbying from 98 to 2016. I don't know if what you were doing when you were there.
We just missed because I was 2016 to 2020.
We did. And so Colorado. I worked on health freedom issues starting in 2008, 2009 with respect to alternative practitioners. And so like your homeopaths, Mark, and your naturopaths and your holistic herbalists and whatnot, so they could practice their wellness without having to license. And I think, maybe Mark's going another direction with that. Not sure, but that's what we would work on. In any event, I had done that lobbying for that long, and I felt myself losing my effectiveness because I no longer had the right energy for interacting with the legislators I was trying to persuade. I used the exact same words that I would use 20 years ago. I knew and had the right tone and everything, just the energy I was sending, though, after so long in there working with people, learning, things about them and their personalities and whatnot, and just not having the right energetic connection with them impacted my, my ability to be effective. And so it's just, so what you're carrying with you inside, then you got to practice all the facial expressions, practice all of the, verbal, but the energy you carry is what's felt by the person that you're chatting with. And so I did want to, share that with you, that portion of your presentation. I appreciate what you're doing. There's a lot of information in there. Like I said, I was familiar with it from that other gentleman back in 2020. He has that out there. And I did see that you worked on a vaccine bill in Colorado. And Susan Lontine in 2020, you testified against her bill. I knew her when she was an aide working for several legislators in the Capitol before she was a legislator. And when I would approach legislators just on health freedom issues regarding practicing without a license, I would often be hit with, "Are you one of those anti-vaxxers?" And I was like, "Okay, I'm here to talk to you about, right to practice complementary and alternative medicine." And so Charles and I know each other. We have some background going together with some people in Texas, where I went to college, and some people that were involved in politics there. And turns out Charles and I had a long old friend there. And in any event, I appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to learning more about your program.
Yeah, that piece that he said about your presence, right? Your energy. That is another reason why we have our Coping Skills Corner as a part of our program, an optional part of our program. Because a lot of people came to our movement through trauma. And so they carry that trauma with them. And that trauma for me was a big barrier in my original outreach pursuits. It affected my allowing and affected my preparation. It really dirtied my lens, as I like to think of it. And also, sometimes you get a little jaded working with people in the real world because people don't always behave in ways that make rational sense. And sometimes you can get a rash of unwillingness that can really be demoralizing for you internally. And so coping skills is another way to help yourself be prepared, right? Because being emotionally regulated, having your energy in the right place, having your heart space and head space aligned is a big, important preparation step. Preparation and allow, people often think are passive steps, but really they are not. You actively prepare. Even now, whenever I leave my house, I actively get myself in the headspace and the heart space to have these interactions. Because if I'm not in the headspace and heart space, I have a confrontation, or I leave because I don't want to have a confrontation, but I also don't want to talk to you, right? And so there's lots of different things there, but that's a big piece of it, is helping yourself get in the headspace and heart space. And that is why those components are a part of our program, because you are a whole person and you bring your whole self to Outreach Encounters. And we're here to help that whole self grow and thrive into a space where you can be the most impactful version of you possible. That's what we do. Yeah.
And thanks,
I love
Carrie.
that piece. Thank you.
And to conclude, Carrie, why don't you tell folks how to reach you?
So you can email me directly at Carrie, Carrie, at Texans4vaccinechoice.com, all one word. I put it on the screen earlier. You can also go to our website, Texans4vaccinechoice.com. If you're in Texas, you can volunteer with us for free, and you can get this communications training and so much more for 3 to 6 hours of volunteer work per month. Just go to Get Involved, click Volunteer, and you'll be connected directly to me. If you're out of Texas and you still want to train with me, because wherever there are two humans, there's a need for communications training, you can buy yourself a ticket and a workbook and join our class that way. You can email me directly to get hooked up with that. You can do it. That's my final message, is that outreach is just a collection of skills that you can learn and employ with a high degree of effective execution, right? You can do this, and every single person that you reach matters.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.